Before I do anything else, I want to get in here with the hide paste and get it up around the underside of the antler burr and also on the cape that's going to go around the antler burr. This way it's glued tight. It will stay glued into position around the antlers. Deer's on both sides. You've got 2 antlers normally. And you want that done on both sides. Now you don't need a big heavy glop of hide paste. Just enough to coat everything. It will go around down the sides, around the antlers, as long as it's up under the base. That's the main thing. Up under the burrs of the antlers. And onto the hide. I got to get around and get the other side. There, now the top of his toupee can go down. Kind of what it looks like. And situate into place. Okay. And there. Now, the live deer did have all of this hair coming up around the base of his antlers. And I'm glad it turned out that way because that's the way he was when he was brought in. I was going to say in life, but he didn't come to me alive, so I can only assume that's what he was like in life. And you know what happens when you assume? I don't want to talk about it. I assume too many. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to bag this head, bag the face, before I worry about tucking the lips or anything like that. I don't want the face skin to dry out, so I'm going to bag the face so I can begin sewing up the incision across the top and getting the ears in their final position. Okay, to close this guy up, I've got him tipped over towards me, okay? It's at an angle which is easier for my back. Now, after having the hide paste placed around the head and whatnot on the top of the mache, I like to bring the skin up around as tight as possible, and I use the pliers to bring it along. After that's done, I like to take the clay that's part of the ear base and blend it onto the top of the head, much in the natural way that the actual muscles of the deer's ear butts attach to the top of its head. I'm going to reach under there and I'm going to put a little bit of paste on the clay just so that the skin will slide around. A little more paste here. There we go. That's great. Right there. Okay. Now, let me get my needle and thread. I've already have this double waxed thread attached to a fine needle. And you can see how small the needle is here. Okay. 3-cornered needle. It will cut through the skin where I want it. First thing I'm going to do is go in, and we have a little bit of a cut here around the area the needle needs to go through, so I want to be careful that I don't tear that rip. That will be fixed in place with the hide paste, and I can get a small hide nail over there later on while it's being set up. One of the toughest things to do is get the needle in the right place to start. All right. Now, to make sure that the knot does not get pulled through, I go through. It's a double strand of thread. I go like so. pull it down, then I grab one side of the thread over the other, pull, and that will bring the knot to the underside of the hide. It will not show from the top. Now I'm going to get in here. I'm going to push the needle through. Now this is just going to be a simple back and forth, a simple baseball stitch at this point. I get my probe and be sure the skin is shoved under the ear butt where it's supposed to be, like so. Now I'm going to bring this around. It will come together. This will come together. I like to go a little ahead of where the incision started, just to make sure I take up any stretch that has occurred during the shaving process at the tannery. I'm going to hold down the skin here and push through. It's a little tough. It's a younger deer, but he has got some tough hide, no doubt about it. Sometimes it helps if you use a long nose pliers to help bring the needle along. Now again, I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to bring these two ends together here. I want to watch now. I don't want to pull until I don't want the thread to snap through the skin. But right here, you can see that the skin has been drawn together at that point. Okay. Right there. I'm going to continue on. After the needle's pushed through, I hold the skin down with one finger, pull up on the needle with the other hand. This way the skin doesn't keep rising and pulling the stitches apart from themselves. Now I draw them together carefully, like so. Now where this skin is exposed here, I'm going to push that under the antler burr, and to do that I'm going to use, not the probe this time, I don't want to go through the skin. I'm just going to grab one of my big modeling tools and model the skin where I want it to be. I want the skin under the antler burr. I want this little piece of hide under the antler burr. I want this hide here pressed down, flat against itself. Now remember now, the hide paste is in there. Okay, the hide paste is going to help hold everything in place. This really is a fantastic paste in that it does a real journeyman's job of holding the skin down. Now I'm going to hold the skin down tight against the top of the mache when I put the needle through. I don't want the skin pulling the stitches open. Again, holding it down as I pull the needle from the other side, like so. Make sure the hairs are pulled out of the stitches on both sides. There we go. Again, I'm going to come underneath, hold the skin down here, like so, and push it through. Now, this is a very sharp needle. If the needles are dull, I put this leather finger guard over my middle finger, and that helps me push the needle through the skin. Because like I say, this is a brand new, nice sharp needle, so it goes right through the skin. And the skin is shaved very evenly up here. A little on the thin side, but very, very evenly. The Wildlife Gallery does a real good job along the seams. Now, that will not show when it's completed. I'm just simply storing the finger cot, the leather finger cot, on the brow tine. And we go through again. Now, as I said, the top is closed with the baseball stitch. The main body of the incision, from the back of the V down the back of the deer's neck incision, is done with the upholster's or hidden stitch. And I have a video on YouTube that demonstrates that. I will do it here for this deer. This deer has a little shorter hair than the one originally demonstrated on. Now, what I'm doing is I'm grabbing the two sides of the incision between my forefinger and thumb and holding the skin as I pull the threads taut. I can feel the skin coming together. And I only bring it together just so much and no more. This way it won't tear. Go through again. These stitches are only about 1/8 of an inch apart, maybe. Sometimes, if the situation warrants, they're a 1/16 of, ouch, a 1/16 of an inch apart. Okay. Didn't go quite through the fingernail that time, but I have driven the needle through the top of my fingernail. And I'll tell you, you want to talk about a pain that hurts like hell? That's a pain that hurts like hell. Again, bring the two ends of the skin together, all right, like so, between the finger and the forefinger and thumb. Draw on the thread. You feel the skin drawing together. And you see this is what it looks like on the underside. Right there. Okay? Not bad. I'm going to pull the hair out of these stitches. I don't want the hair sticking down through the stitches. There we go. It's wonderful, wonderful. All right. Hey, music's a big part of my life. All kinds of music. Classic rock. 70s rock. Feel-good music. Pop rock. No country or western. I don't like either one of those. Classical music from time to time. If I really want to relax, I'll put some classical on. But I've always got music playing in my head. I have what I call a radio head. Go figure. All right, now this last stitch will also be the knot that closes it off. And to do that, pull all the hairs out of the stitch, come around, and instead of just tightening down, I put the needle up through that last stitch, like so. And before I tighten it down, I put my fingers on either side of the incision again. I pull it tight. Now I pull the loop closed and then go through the loop again for a second time to close the loop. Before I pull that loop tight, I pull the first loop down. I got to get this. I've got to get this end corner of the skin to be on the inside. So I'll get in there with my probe tool and put it on the inside where it belongs. Otherwise, you'll have a little piece of flesh side of the skin showing, and you don't want that. Now I'm going to pull this down tight, so that the loop on the loop closes, and now I close the last loop on the loop. And I'm going to pick the stitches out of the hair out of the stitches. There we go. And there we are. Nicely closed. Now I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to cut the thread off the wire. It would be good to know what I'm cutting off. Open them up. Open up the double strands. Pull them tight. And simply make just a regular little knot. I don't know if this is a square knot or whatever this is. I just knot it off. Pull it down tight, like so. I don't cut these two ends off. I leave them long, and they get tucked up under the skin and pushed into the clay of the ear base. Now I'll start the other side. And when I get back, we'll start down the back incision of the deer. All right, to begin the upholsterers or hidden stitch, I've come down through the top side opposite the end of the seam at the top here. I've come to the top and down. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to come over, go down through the top of the opposite side. All right. Now this is a stitch where you have to be aware of the hair being pulled through, especially when the thread gets a little gnarly from having hide paste on it. Okay, we're down through the top. On the same side, we go up through the flesh side as close as we can to where the stitch went in. Now we're going to cross over. I'm going to cross over the top, like so, to the opposite side. I'm going to grab the skin here. My fingers are going to be in the way for a minute, but I'm going to grab the skin on this side. Maybe I can use a pliers just to hold the skin so my big fat fingers don't get in the way. A little silver tip of a pliers. Here we go. We go down through the top on the opposite side, like so. Pull the needle through. Back the thread out to pull the hairs back out. Now I'm going to have to pick these out. I'm picking out the hairs. I say these, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. I'm picking out the hairs that came through. Okay. Now, on the side we just came down on, I'm going to go up through the flesh side, like so. Pull the skin. Pull the thread. I'm going to bring these first two stitches together. And they are now pulling the skin down upon itself. Oh, I've got to get this piece of thread out of here. This is the thread that was hanging from the first stitches that were closed. I just want to get them out of the way. There we go. Put them under and out of the way. Okay. Let's see if we can show this. I don't know how well the camera's picking it up. Right there, right here, the incision is being drawn in on itself, down on the left and on the right, onto itself, closing the seam. I'm going to repeat a couple more stitches, then I'm going to have to change this thread out because it's a little too short. I underestimated the length of the incision with this piece of thread, which was left over from the previous mounted deer head. Being sure I keep the hairs from being pulled down into the stitch from the top. We go down and we come up through the flesh side on the same side of the incision. We're going to cross over again. There we are. Cross over to this side, to the right side, down through the top of the right side, down through the top of the right side, holding the hairs back out of the way. There, I didn't only pulled one or two. That's good. That's good. Okay. Now up through the flesh side on the right, same side we came down on. Now again, over to the left and go down through the top of the incision on the left. I've got a lot of clay and whatnot built up on this needle. I'm going to have to clean the shaft of this needle off. Pick the hairs out of the threads as we go. Now I'm going to go up through the flesh side on the left side of the incision. Put my finger under the incision, draw it down on itself. Between the thumb and forefinger again, just as I did earlier. And here you can see the incision coming down on itself, right there. Right there. Can't make it any plainer. This side comes down, the right side comes down, the left side comes down. They join on themselves in between, hidden beneath the surface. Thus, the invisible, hidden upholsterer's stitch. That's how it's done. I will continue that for the entire length. I have to thread this off right now. I have to tie off this I have to tie off this thread right now so I can cut a new thread to go further down the incision, and I need to clean off all of this nasty gook off my needle. See how it's coated? One part is nice. The back part of the needle is all nasty. I'll be back. This is the thread I use. Purchased from Joe Combs. He still supplies it. It's a nice, heavy, pre-waxed cotton polyester thread. I can use it single for closing cuts and bullet holes and arrow holes, and plus I double it over for my regular stitching projects. Alrighty, I've got my needle all cleaned, scraped it down with a cartilage knife, went over it with some fine wet dry sandpaper, so it's all clean. Let's get back to sewing. The thread that I had to cut off yesterday because it was too short has been tucked under the incision and pressed down into the clay for the ear butts. I'm going to start by going up right alongside the former stitches. I want to go up to start. The reason I'm going up to start is because when I pull this knot down tight, I want it to be on the underside. The only way to be on the underside is to come up from underneath. So, let me get the hairs out of the way. I've looped through the doubled thread at the base of the knot. I'm going to pull my thread through, pull down to shorten up, grab one side of the thread, pull, and you see the knot going underneath. Now I pull on both. With that done, I'm going to go over to the other side and pull these threads down from the previous stitching, and I want to go in through the top right next to the previous stitches. Pull the thread down on the right. Pull the old threads in. See how they disappear? I hope you can see how they disappeared. Now I'm going to come up through the flesh side on the right. Going to cross over to the left side of the incision, go down through the hair side, through the top. Like so. Keep the threads out of the stitches as I go. Keep the hair out of the stitches as I go, not the threads. The hair. Keep the hair out of the stitches as I go. Now I'm going to come up through the flesh side on the left, like so. Let me untangle this thread from the previous stitching. Here we go. Cross over to the right side once again, down through the hair side, like so, down through the hair side, like so. Up through the flesh side on the right, cross over to the left one more time, down through the hair side on the left, I want to keep my threads untangled from themselves and from anything else. With my finger, I'm moving the hairs out of the way. I don't want them to get pulled into the stitching on both sides. The hairs out of the way. Up through the flesh side on the left. Now I have these several stitches, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 stitches. Put my finger under the incision, pull it taut. Like so. And there we have the hidden or invisible or upholsterer's stitch. Now I've got this entire length to accomplish all the way down to here. I'm going to continue on off camera because I'm in a position where I'm reaching over the deer instead of being behind it, and that's a little uncomfortable. So I'll be back. I'd like to demonstrate one little thing. You saw how the threads were, coming away from each other and just really interfering with themselves and catching hair. Let me demonstrate how I wax thread. This is a little cake of beeswax. I got this actually from a place that was selling honey. The way you wax the double threads is you get them in the wax and go over them like this, back and forth. Go all around the double threads for the entire length of the thread, all the way down to your needle. Okay? Now, once that's done, the warmth from your fingers will, as you can hear, will sort of melt the wax onto the threads, removing any of the excess little bits that were in place. So now what we've got is a nice heavy line of double thread. Like so. This will keep from getting in its own way. It was actually getting in its own way. And you see how nice it will pass through the hide as well, not catching let's say the thread is pre-waxed to begin with, but if you wax it after doubling it over, you can pull your hairs out of the stitch, and a little easier to control the hairs not being pulled through, like so. You come up. It also allows the thread to pull through the skin much smoother. You see how it's not coming apart on itself like it was before. I really should have waxed the thread before I started, but now you see how the simple process of waxing the thread is done. You always read, you should wax your thread. That's how to do it. Okay, I've stitched all the way down to the bottom. I'm about to close it off. The last loop will create the knot. I put the little needle through the last loop, and I pull from, well, I pull like so. Yeah, hold the loop up, clear the hairs, pull down on the loop, like so. Now I'm going to pull this down, like so. I'm going to cut the thread I'll cut off just enough, about like so. I'll put a knot in the end of the thread left attached to the needle, and that will start the stitching on the next deer at the antlers. I'm going to take this thread, unwrap it from itself, make a square knot, another square knot. Now I take the threads, put them back together. Get a 6-inch needle. Six-inch long sewing needle, 3-cornered needle. Thread the thread through the eye of the needle. Find where the, well, I could do it after I find where the thread's tied together. Go in where the last knot was located, right through the skin. Come through the skin and out the skin further down from the incision. You can see the needle is right here. Okay, now let's put that thread back through the eye of the needle again. Like so. Now, keeping the threads out of the way, out of the path of the needle, pull the large needle through and all the way out the other side. So the thread is now down here. Pull this tight, pull it taut. Now let the skin right up the thread. Cut it without cutting the hairs. And now with a probe, bring the skin down, taxi it all back into place. And we straighten out the incision area. Start tamping it flat. What I have here is some of the Pro On Premium Hide Paste and a little water. As per the instruction sheet that came with it, I'm going to make, sort of a hair setting gel. But this is a little better than regular hair setting gel. This will get down and really tame any hairs that might want to stick up. The nice thing about it is being a water-based paste, it will brush out when dry. Now what I have to do here, the problem I'm having here, I need to taxi the skin forward just a bit. Let me get my stout rougher here and bring this cape up the neck just a bit.